Hello and welcome. This is another Confessions podcast from your friends at BBC Radio 2. And to prove it, a Radio 2 jingle. This one going by the name of ID Big Hair Shotgun. Don't ask me why, it's 11 seconds. All right. BBC Radio 2. That's us. Just to prove that this is authentic. It's like a stamp of approval. So this week's Concise Collection features names such as Teach Your Children Well, No Milk Today, Living Next Door to Malice, and Magic Bus. Here come the tales. Father Simon and the liturgically correct confessional collective. As I lie on my deathbed, I feel it's finally time to release my confession. Okay, it's man flu, but all men know that. That means there isn't long left to live. Oh, I'm so poorly. Could you get me a lemon? My confession harms no animals and is in no way sordid, so probably will not make it into that mythical private collection of unbroadcastable confessions.
Excellent.
My confession goes back over 20 years, and I was then still living with my parents when the eldest nephew came down to stay with his grandparents for a holiday. Of course, it's left to the cool uncle and godparent, if that helps in any way on the forgiveness scale, to provide the evening and weekend entertainment, having worn his grandparents out during the day. Now, Philip, the nephew in question, was at that time probably about 3 years old. And as he looked up to me, I found myself teaching him ways to help him in growing up to be the fine, upstanding man he is now. This included the correct way of answering the question when asked by friends of the family on meeting him, "Hello, Philip, how are you?" with the very respectable response of, "Very well, thank you. How are you?" He's an extra in The Crown, the royal family drama. Yeah. This impressed everybody, coming from such a young man. There were other questions and responses that I taught this highly impressionable young boy, most of which were fine and didn't cause any concern for his or my own future. However, every uncle has this slight devilish side. After all, they aren't your kids, and you're going to send them back in a few days. And every younger brother deep down wants to do something that is going to annoy your elder brother and sister-in-law. For example, giving your two nephews late Christmas presents of toy whistles, just as they're about to leave on a 4-hour car journey. Ha ha! Anyway, I digress. You see, Simon, during that fateful week when my nephew was on his holiday, I taught him something else that became my downfall. I taught him that the proper response to the question of, "What's the magic word?" was not the usual addition of the word please. You see, when I finally convinced him that I was right and his parents had been wrong all this time to insist on him being polite, I thought that his slightful, playful change was not going to affect me directly. Fast forward to the end of the week and I suddenly realised that there was a chance I was going to be found out. Philip's parents and younger brother came down to pick him up on the Saturday, and we were going to have the dreaded family meal. Everybody sat together around the table trying to make polite conversation as we ate, and Philip insisted on sitting next to his cool uncle rather than his parents. Everybody thought that was kind of cute and that I'd really made an impression on my nephew. And so Philip was made to demonstrate his newfound manners to his parents by getting them to ask him, "Hello, Philip, how are you?" followed by the impressive, correct response. Philip even tells his mum and dad that I taught him that. Cue the praise from my brother and sister-in-law as to how I'd made such a good impression on their son. We'd almost reached the end of the meal without incident, and dessert was being consumed when the fateful moment happened. Philip quickly finished his dessert and asked the question I was dreading. Can I have some more? Can I have some more, Grandma?" he asks. His mum looks at him sternly, and time for me seemed to stand still as she said to her son, "What's the magic word, Philip?" My nephew then turns to me with a look only a 3-year-old boy has. The sweet look that means you're about to get into trouble. Philip turns to his mum with the biggest smile on his face that I'd ever seen, and then delivers the response that I'd taught him. "Now!" he shouted. There was a sudden silence in the room, except for the giggling of a 3-year-old boy who knows he's done wrong. "Now! I want it! Now!" "Philip!" came the shocked response from his mother. "Uncle Ian taught me that," he shouted, pointing at my retreating back as I quickly excused myself from the table to the kitchen to do the washing up. I could, however, still hear his giggling from the kitchen. In my defence, and in an attempt to gain my forgiveness from the collective, I should say that Philip has been unaffected by this experience. He probably doesn't even remember it, and is now a pleasant young man who still enjoys spending time with his super cool uncle whenever he visits. To be honest, I don't regret what I did. After all, surely it's what is expected of any uncle, isn't it? Kind regards, cool Uncle Ian, teaching bad manners to his nephew, but then the whole thing is other people's kids, send them home. Cause trouble somewhere else. Thank you very much. You can visit any time. Let's see what Sister Orna makes of all that. What do you think, Orna?
I think it's funny. Am I allowed to find it funny?
Of course you can.
Yes.
That is the point.
I would have laughed. I'm terrible auntie, though.
Are you an auntie?
I am.
Would you ever do something like this?
I think it's really funny because it's not a swear word. No. It's not that bad, and it is actually really funny.
Let's be honest, it could have been a lot worse. A lot
Yes,
of
that's what I'm
uncles said,
thinking.
I could have been...
Free reign here.
Yeah.
I think it's... Yeah, because it's so funny, and it's not a swear word, and it's the only thing that he's taught him that's bad by the sound of things.
Apparently.
Yeah, so we know. I think on this occasion, definitely forgive.
Brother Matthew.
Well, obviously you've got a certain degree of power in being this super cool uncle, but as Spider-Man has taught us, with great power comes great responsibility. And but I think he's a little bit too hung up on being super cool uncle, and I think that's going to come back and bite him. But that said, we all had in the back of our minds something far worse than now.
Yes.
And not quite as funny as now.
Yeah.
So I am going to say
But
definitely...
you knew it wasn't going to be a cursing word.
I knew it wasn't going to be that, but I also knew it wasn't going to be please. So I am going to forgive, because it's funny.
Simon and the Collective, I'm seeking absolution for an event that took place back in the early 80s when I was a 19-year-old TV service engineer fresh out of college. I was working for a small electrical and DIY shop in Romford. On the day in question, I was called to fix a TV at an address not far from the shop. When I arrived, the door was answered by a young woman who I judged to be the daughter of the house, as she was more or less the same age as me. She was, to my 19-year-old eyes, a vision of beauty. She was small, exceedingly pretty, blue-eyed, strawberry blonde, and didn't appear at all horrified at the sight of the skinny, spotty proto-TV service engineer on her doorstep. In short, she was pretty much exactly the kind of girl I'd been saving myself for. Very big of you, Colin.
At 19.
I resolved to give her the full blast of my little-tested chatting up skills. First of all, however, I had the business of the broken TV to attend to. I was very much looking forward to impressing the young woman by making short work of the repair. Unfortunately, my hopes were dealt a blow when I was shown the TV in question. This was back in the day when TVs were generally big and heavy, but even by the standards of the time, this one was a monster. Older listeners may remember the childhood experience of being shepherded into the school hall to watch educational programmes on an enormous television with folding front doors on a 6-foot-high stand. With the exception of the stand, this was exactly the behemoth that was before me, complete with folding doors. It was bad news for me. I'd never seen one of these before, and I had no circuit diagram to work from. I unscrewed the back of the beast, knowing full well I had little hope of fixing it. Meanwhile, things seemed to be going swimmingly with the young lady. We were having a jolly chat about adamant and Rubik's Cube, I think, and other important issues of the day. She was smiling encouragingly. She was even laughing at my sparkling witticisms. She told me she'd just left school, and my subtle inquiries revealed that she had no boyfriend. I think I said, "Do you have a boyfriend?" And she said, "No."
There you go.
Green light, Father Simon. I kept the conversation going for as long as possible while biffing around absently in the back of her TV, trying to look as if I knew what I was doing. Ultimately, after a decent interval, I had to tell her that I would have to take it back to the shop and fix it there. No matter, thought the 19-year-old in me, she can't fail to be impressed by the feat of me manhandling this gigantic television out to my van completely unaided. Do I need any help? No, I don't. Took pretty much every bit of my strength to lift the thing up. I was determined to make it appear as effortless as possible. Trying not to sound strained, I asked the young woman if she could open the door in front of me. Teeth gritted and with the veins bulging from my neck, I managed to get the TV to the door. And it's as I stepped outside that things started to go a little wrong. This was at the time when most people still had their milk delivered. And like many households, the customer employed one of those small wire milk baskets with a little indicator to show how many pints were required. like you said, different times, I think. Yeah. This was, of course, left on the doorstep. In the event, I learned that one of these baskets makes an excellent trap for an unwary young engineer whose sightline is obscured by the fact he's carrying a very large electrical item. I stepped right on top of the milk basket, and the combined weight of me and the world's largest television caused it to be irredeemably crushed. Furthermore, it wrapped itself around my foot and, despite much furious foot shaking, could not be dislodged. Conscious that I wouldn't be able to hold the television for much longer, I apologised profusely for the fate of the basket and continued down the path, providing my own percussion on every second step. When I reached the curb, the bent wire basket snapped and a spring-loaded wire end broke away and stabbed me in the ankle, drawing blood. In response, my right leg decided it had had enough abuse and folded up beneath me. My left leg, either in a spirit of fraternity or because it was simply unable to cope by itself, immediately followed suit, and I found myself squatting precariously on my haunches, carrying this thing to the last ounce of my strength. I was desperate to avoid dropping the TV onto the tarmac, but legs had nothing left in them. When I tried to move, I only succeeded in rolling onto my back, where I lay helpless, pinned to the ground by the weight of, and here's a word that's never been used in a confession before, Brobdingnagian television set. Brobdingnagian possibly, but yeah, this is a reference to Gulliver's Travels and means anything of a colossal size, which I did not have to check on an online encyclopedia merely moments ago. It means vast and colossal. Anyway, this television set and doing a fair version of an aptly named Dying Fly, a dance craze that was recently popularised by Tiswas. The pretty young woman, totally failing to disguise her mirth, gamely came to my assistance, and between us, after much huffing and puffing, we managed to manoeuvre the television onto my van. I made my farewells with as much dignity as could be mustered by a young fellow whose dream girl had just watched him being wrestled to submission by a milk basket and a TV set. The TV was subsequently fixed, and I returned the next day with the assistance of a colleague. The door was answered by a lady who I took to be the young woman's mother. The young woman was also there, but seemed, shall we say, less responsive than the previous day, even though I was bragging about how tricky the TV had been to repair. I think I saw her a few weeks later in the company of the lad from the butcher's shop 3 doors down. Now that's got to be the ultimate crushing disappointment. It's like a scene from Dad's Army. Father Simon, I seek forgiveness not only from the customer for causing the destruction of an innocent wire milk basket, but also from an older, more experienced engineer who actually did conduct the repair and from whom I shamelessly stole the credit for doing so. Colin in Upminster, who lost his first love because he was wrestled to the floor, as he said, by a basket and a very large television. I do remember those huge televisions that schools used to have. Used to wheel out in front of the assembly. You could watch some documentary.
They were very posh if they had a door, weren't they?
What, a TV with a door?
Yeah,
I don't know, but maybe they were just so vast it was supposed to be like a theatre.
Oh, okay. I hadn't thought of that.
Anyway, what'd you say, Sister Bobby?
Oh, well, the thing is, for Colin from Upminster, I absolutely love you. The girl sounds like the girl in Seven White Horses, actually. That's how I think you're describing. And actually, more fool her for going out with the butcher's assistant.
Yeah,
or
don't go down with the guy from the butcher's.
Because actually, Colin, you seem like the absolute perfect guy. You saved the telly. And actually, you don't need to be really forgiven for stealing the credit, because I think in that situation, given the fact that you've gone through so much trouble and got it out there, I probably would have done the same. And I think actually maybe I'm hoping that you found a better one out there. I'm hoping you haven't been on your own. So you are completely forgiven. I don't think you need it, Colin, and well done for saving the telly.
What do you say, Brother Matthew?
Well, this is very much like the labours of Hercules if instead of cleaning out the stables he'd had to carry a big telly in order to win the favour of a fair young maiden, which obviously didn't happen here because she ended up with the butcher's apprentice. And I say more fool her because definitely he was the pick, although I'm not absolutely sure why this telly needed to have doors on it. It seemed to become it was a time when we were ashamed.
Furniture.
We were ashamed of having a telly.
Yeah.
Oh no, we don't have a telly. We only have that big box in the corner that's obviously a telly
with valves.
Absolutely, yeah. So I am going to forgive because better off without her. I say, where was she when he was collapsing on the floor? Nowhere,
laughing,
giggling away in her
callous
diaphanous gown somewhere on the doorstep, and he was on the floor
let
under
the butcher,
a big telly.
Let the butcher,
have. Butcher.
Have his time with her.
Let's.
That's the way it goes.
Dear.
Yes.
Oh, right. Okay.
So is she forgiven or not?
He's forgiven.
He's forgiven,
Yeah.
and she isn't.
She's definitely not
Because
forgiven.
she's a flimsy.
Well, no, not that. Oh dear.
Tonight's comes from Griselda
Oh,
in
that's a
London.
fantastic name, Griselda.
It is. One imagines that that's not a proper name, but anyway, it could just be that we've given Mary the name of Griselda, or Mary has just chosen to be known as Griselda for the purposes of this story. An incident which goes back, Father Simon, about 10 years. I'm not proud of my actions. Actually, yes, I am. I had recently moved into a new first... Can I just say, this confession is a very retro confession. This is the kind of story that when confessions started on the Breakfast Show on Radio 1 many, many years ago, this is exactly the kind of thing used to come in a lot.
Because you used to get away with rather racy ones back then.
Yeah, it's not that racy. Well, it has
I
moments.
think so.
Anyway, but you'll see what I mean. I'd recently moved into a new first floor flat, and the occupants of the ground floor flat were very pleasant, quiet, and actually no problem at all. However, the couple occupying the upstairs flat were the total opposite. Noisy, stiletto heels on a laminate floor, smelly, cooking and smoking, inquisitive bordering on nosy, and overly friendly. Very, very overly friendly. Every time I came home, the female of the pair, says Griselda,
Right.
or the woman, as I think, would be at my door within minutes. Do you need help unloading your shopping? Did you buy shoes? Have you bought a dress? I love your new perfume. Can I help you prepare supper? Really?
She sounds really nice.
Strange.
What?
Did you have a good day? Did you have a decent journey? It was, Father Simon, relentless. She was always there. Even when I was utterly rude to her, it was water off a duck's back. She'd simply say, "Oh, poor you, you've had a tough day. I'll leave you in peace. You need a drink. Shall I pour you one?" "I'll see you tomorrow." And off she'd stomp up the stairs and either clatter around her own flat, or there was some hanky-panky with a boyfriend. This used to happen very often. Life was beginning to get unbearable. Yes, I did change it. I was arriving home late at night, killing my car lights before I even got into the drive, blindly trying to open the main door and creep silently upstairs to my front door, which I would then unlock and then close as quietly as I could so that I didn't disturb her. I didn't even dare turn on a light, or, unbelievably, didn't dare flush the loo for fear that she'd be straight down into my flat and start the old Inquisition. Eventually, after nearly 6 months of this girly neighbour stalking, I could take no more and decided to move out. It was that bad, I decided to move. They clearly weren't planning on going anywhere for sure. I moved a lot of stuff out quietly and then confessed to her that I would be moving to another side of town. In fact, it was another side of the country. "Ooh, you must give us your address so that we can keep in touch. Maybe we can come and visit you." Yeah, like that was going to happen. She asked if there was anything that I didn't want or need that she could have or buy. There was indeed. I had a fabulous sofa. It was huge and it was heavy, and it wasn't going to fit into my new place. It had stunning fabric covers and was in super condition. I would gift it to them. Yes, it's a verb. They were delighted. An extra large sofa for their sitting room. Now, you may think this is very generous of me under the circumstances, but there was one addition to the sofa I needed before handing it over. There was a lovely parade of shops quite near to where we lived, and one of them was a good old-fashioned joke shop. I belted round to the joke shop, and yes, I was so happy because they sold what I wanted, and that is Dennis the Menace style itching powder. Yes, it really exists, and yes, I bought a whole bunch of it.
Oh no.
I bought 3 packs of the itching powder to start with, and with rubber gloves on, I took the covers off the cushions and rubbed a packet of powder deep into each of all of the cushions. I then put the covers back on and stacked them back up next to the sofa, which by now was upended and ready to go upstairs. I think not forgiven, by the way, Griselda. The boyfriend and the girlfriend then struggled and pulled and pushed and shoved and swore as they tried to get the sofa up into their flat. With gloved hands, I very carefully put the cushions on the landing for them to take up themselves. I certainly wasn't going to touch them again. As I was loading the last of my things onto the lorry, they called out of the upstairs window, "Thank you, it's so perfect." I said, "So long, suckers, goodbye." Now, itching powder, Father Simon, is rather brilliant because it's made, as you may well know, of rose hips, as in teas and jams and jellies. I checked this and it turns out to be true. And they have hairy little barbs on them, so they simply can't be gotten rid of. Not on fabric anyway. I had rubbed it deep into the cushions, and of course it then had to work its way through the quality fabric, and so it would have taken at least a few days for any itching to be apparent, and given their propensity in their sitting room for a little bit of hanky-panky, I can only assume that it wouldn't be long before my cunning plan took hold in many surprising
places.
and itchy kind of ways.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not asking for their forgiveness because they deserved it, but I am seeking forgiveness in the event that they pass the sofa on to some unsuspecting person. who then suffered a totally unwarranted fate. How long itching powder stays itchy for? Who knows? Even worse, if they handed over money for it. For that, I really do beg forgiveness, because there's no way to get rid of it once it's there. Oh, there, she's answered my question. And those two so deserve the Dennis the Menace treatment. I still keep a pack in my desk drawer for emergencies, by the way, says the slightly worrying Griselda in London. P.S. Snigger, snigger. Me and Nasha are best friends. Anyway, I'm not expecting a lot of itching powder Well, I am expecting quite a few. Not many will get on. But anyway, that's the way Griselda decided to get her own back on some slightly strange behaviour from the hanky-panky couple upstairs, who did sound a little bit nosy. Anyway, Sister Bobby, what do you say? What do you think?
It's difficult because in times where we complain there's not enough neighbourliness, and it's, we all need to kind of know who we're living next door to. I do understand though when it's different and your neighbours have different ideas to you. It's tricky. You have to negotiate. So I was with you, Griselda, with nosy neighbours, or just maybe not nosy, just wanting to be friends and make sure
nice
that they
dress.
were
Where
welcoming.
did you get your dress? Where did you get your haircut?
Yeah,
Nice
I can
headphones.
understand. Yeah, I know. But that's when you have to come up with a cunning plan. Right, to make sure that doesn't happen, like you're studying Russian history or something and you've got to get in and get that done because you can guarantee they won't know anything about it, so it's fine. So I understand they made you move out. However, I was with you and thought they were odd, but actually putting in itching powder afterwards to get your own back is just a little bit passive-aggressive. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it makes you any better than them. That's what I was thinking. Also, keeping a pack in your drawer,
just in case,
rather than dealing with problems straight off, worries me greatly. So I think, Griselda, because you've wasted a really good sofa, I think you're not forgiven.
Brother Matthew.
Well, I mean, some would say that her behaviour was strange, but I thought that the neighbour's behaviour was perfectly friendly and a nice thing to do.
No, you wouldn't. You would drive you mad.
It would drive me nuts, obviously, but then I'm not a normal person. I would say a normal person in that position should react and say, what a nice thing this is that they're offering to make me tea and inquiring where I bought my shoes and my perfume and things like that. So I think maybe you should have fought fire with fire, and whenever she came down and wanted to engage you in conversation, do things like, look her square in the eye and say, I like your choice of shower gel, and see what she does. She probably would never come down again. I know I wouldn't talk to anyone who discussed my shower gel with me. So, for that reason, I am not going to forgive.
Dear Father Mayo, my confession starts way back in 1969 when I was a 19-year-old bus conductor in Liverpool. One of the perks of the job was chatting up all the young ladies that rode on my bus. I didn't consider myself good looking, but I was okay. My secret weapon was that I had the gift of the gab, and thanks to my charm, I managed to get quite a number of dates.
Different times.
Well, do you think
Yeah.
do you think bus conductors?
No.
Do they not chat?
No.
Apparently they don't.
No.
You sure about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
One day I was chatting up a girl who had alighted the bus while I was collecting the fares upstairs. She was stunningly beautiful and dressed, by the way, in all the latest fab gear you'd expect a Liverpool lass to wear in the 60s. What would that be?
Boots
Boots made for walking?
and a miniskirt,
Probably.
probably.
My charm and gift of the gab worked yet again, and she agreed to meet me that evening. I was well made up, and that was until she stood up to get off the bus. This, Father Simon, is because I am 5'8", and she was at least 6'2". She was a good 4 inches taller than me, and this really matters, as you can imagine. Don't bring me into it, mate. This is your choice. Well, we met for a drink, but that night I felt so self-conscious, especially when I bumped into some of my mates who gave me some stick and behind my back were calling her Snow White and calling me Dopey. There you go. I felt terrible and I knew that I had to end it. We were clearly incompatible. So I came up with a plan which I thought wouldn't hurt her feelings.
Why would you end? I mean,
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Yeah. You're in, mate!
Yeah.
No, she's 4 inches taller than me. That's it. You see, I told this young lady that I was married. Separated, but I had a baby to look after. I told her that I needed to put the baby first and that I was struggling financially, so it would probably be best if should we just call it a day? The girl, crestfallen, reluctantly agreed and said she understood And although I felt really guilty, I was relieved and thought that would be the end of the matter. You would think she might say, well, why didn't that stop you chatting me up on the bus yesterday, you plonker? But maybe that's what she was thinking.
Yeah.
Anyway, that didn't happen, though, Father Simon. The next day when I finished my shift, I stepped off the bus, and there she was amongst the crowd, standing head and shoulders above everyone else. I turned to make my getaway, hoping that she hadn't spotted me. But then I heard my name being shouted. Oi, Dave in Liverpool, she shouted. I turned round, shamefaced, and I said to her, what do you think you're doing? I thought we agreed not to see each other. You know, wife, baby, remember that? But before I had a chance to finish my words, I noticed she had a box in her hands, which she then pushed into mine. This is for you and for your little baby, she said. And before I had a chance to say a word, she gave me a hug, turned on her heels and left. I stared at the brown box, which was stuck down with tape, wondering what on earth was in the box. This could go anywhere, couldn't it, really?
I say.
I tore the tape off the box and opened it, and when I looked inside, my shame was complete. In the box was all sorts of beautifully chosen and wonderfully prepared food for me and my non-existent baby. It must have cost a fortune and taken ages to prepare. It was like a small hamper, Father Simon, all prepared by this woman. It was 4 inches taller than me, therefore it was all over. To make matters worse, I didn't know what to do with the food, so after taking out the baby stuff, I took it home to my mum. I thought that maybe I said to her, I think maybe I should bring some groceries in, something I'd never done before in my life. And she said, oh, you're such a good lad. You're so thoughtful. Thank you so much, because that's how my man would have spoken. So I have to ask forgiveness from that wonderful, thoughtful girl whose name was Mary, to my mother for taking the credit for the food, and the forgiveness of all you who might be listening. I think, Dave in Liverpool, you don't really know much about life, really. This woman, by all accounts, was beautiful. She happened to be taller than you. Get over it. Wear heels. It doesn't matter. High heels, you could get away. In the 70s, that would have been fine. You could have set the trend. She gives, I don't know. And then he passes off the food as though he's been thoughtful to his mum. Clip round the ear, mate, apparently. No, I'm not suggesting that, because different times.
Different times, everyone.
In the 60s,
it was okay then,
that was mild.
Was it? No.
Sister Bobby.
Well, the horses for courses, Dave. I mean, you turned down a woman that was, a little bit taller than you. I mean, obviously that's your choice. But if you tell a woman that you can't see her because you've got a baby and you've separated, but you care for your baby, that's only going to make her love you more.
Really?
That's the yes.
Just writing that down.
What you have to do
You're not in a movie, Dave.
Listen, if you want her not to like you, then you have to be an idiot. So think of a way of an excuse that's an idiot.
I think he clearly is an idiot.
Well, yes, but in the wrong way. She'll just absolutely adore him more, which is what she did.
She went away and made all that food.
Well, that's the... Oh, Dave, you just don't know anything about girls, do you?
He doesn't know.
And also, all girls are not the same, so there you go. Dave, are you forgiven for lying to your mum? No, you should never lie to your mum.
Oh, you're such a good lad, so thoughtful.
No, because that wasn't your work, that was somebody else's work, so you're not forgiven.
Brother Matthew.
Well, clearly Dave here was batting outside his league. And as we all know, the rule of life is if you are batting outside your league, hang on for dear life for as long as you can to persuade them that maybe you might be in their league, even though both of you know you're not. She was clearly beautiful and tall and really nice. She gave him why don't you just stand on the box? Stand on the box. Suddenly, everything's fine. We're the same height. You're obviously nicer than me and more beautiful, but I'm sort of nearer the league now.
Think Tom Hanks, he's fine.
Absolutely. Tom Hanks. Anyway.
Oh, no. The other one.
The other one, yeah. So I'm going to not forgive. Not forgive. Should have hung on, mate. Clearly doesn't understand girls, does he? Not like me.
Tom Cruise.
Or Tom Cruise, there you go.
The one.
That was the one, yeah, Tom Cruise.
I interviewed Tom Hanks today, which is why I got Tom Hanks on the brain.
Okay.
He's very bizarre behaviour. I don't think people would do that now, but in the 60s, obviously, that was the only way out of a relationship. You say, by the way, I should say, I'm already married and I've got a kid.
I didn't mention before.
Well, they were this week's confessions. Who did you forgive? Send in your own rather dark and dodgy secret, perhaps inspired by one of those. We've got our own email for it. confessions@bbc.co.uk. More confessions in a week. Don't forget you can listen to all our shows from the last 30 days on iPlayer. You want another jingle? Oh, okay. This is called ID Wow. Wow.
88 to 91 FM, BBC Radio 2.
I think you're supposed to say wow halfway through. That is the point of calling it wow. Anyway, on Monday, we welcomed Austrian author Robert Seethaler to the Radio 2 Book Club. He'd flown in from Berlin especially for us. The new novel is The Tobacconist. On Tuesday, Matthew Paris was here to talk about his book Scorn, The Wittiest and Wickedest Insults in Human History. He gave us a few choice ones as well. You spotted that. William Bell, legendary soul star behind Private Number, was Drive Time special guest on Wednesday, talking about 7 decades in the music industry. His first album on Stax in 40 years is out. And on Thursday, Nige prepared Canard au Pêche, a French version of Duck with Peaches. And Tom Odell on the phone ahead of his Radio 2 concert in Maida Vale. So feel free to go back and listen to any of those if you've got a spare couple of minutes, that kind of thing. And if you've got to this part of the podcast and you just want to prove it, by all means, tweet me and use any of your favourite words from the Matthew Paris section of the interview that we did this week, because that was fun.